Good evening and welcome to the Family Support Center virtual conference series. My name is Marcy Torshin. I'm with the Family Support Center, and this is one of a series of more than 20 virtual conference sessions that we are hosting as part of our 10th annual Parent Empowerment Conference. Tonight we have Miss Brittany Pinkney, who is with us from the Office of School Psychology, and she is a nationally certified school psychologist with Prince George's County Public Schools. She resides in Maryland with her two daughters, Layla and Olivia. She earned her undergraduate degree in psychology and her master's degree and certificate of advanced study in school psychology from Towson University. She currently provides academic and behavioral support to over 100 children with autism at her assigned school. She also provides consultation services to her school team to ensure that the most effective practices are being implemented for her students. We are so glad you're here tonight, and we're going to be discussing transitioning students with autism back to a hybrid environment. So Brittany, welcome, and I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you so much. So go ahead and share my screen for everyone. And we will jump right in. So as mentioned, tonight I'll be talking about support, specifically for students with autism as we transition into the hybrid learning model and students return to school. And so today was definitely the first day back for many of our students, and I had the opportunity to be in my school building. So I'm also able to just share with you about that experience and how the day went for many of our students. So I'll go ahead and get started. So I did share my email to the left. Please feel free to email me if you have any questions, any concerns regarding your student, and then if you have any questions regarding the presentation this evening. As mentioned, I did go to Towson University. I earned my bachelor's in psychology and then my master's in school psychology. I've been with Prince George's County for 9 years. I'm very proud to say that. I love what I do. I worked in my autism program for 9 years as well, again, where we serve over 100 students with autism. As mentioned, I am a mom, so I have two little ones at home. Layla, my 5-year-old, started kindergarten this year. So along with you, many parents out there, I was also helping my student, being a co-teacher at home and helping her with virtual learning. And I have a younger daughter, Olivia, she's 3, so she was also at home. So I'm also happy to share my experience with that as well. This fun fact, I intentionally put it there because it'll be relevant to my next slide. But just 2 things that really help me to remain calm if I'm stressed, and the things that I enjoy doing. I thrive off of coffee. So any trips to Starbucks, I absolutely love. And any experience at Target is always a good one. So that always is a lovely stress reliever for me. And again, I'll touch a little bit about why I put that there in the second slide. And then I just wanted to share a favorite quote of mine. It's by an educator. Her name is Rita Pearson. And she has this quote that every child deserves a champion, an adult who will never give up on them, who understands the power of connection and insists that they become the best that they can possibly be. And that's something that I really strive for. I believe so much in connection and being able to establish a connection with my students. So I just wanted to share that because that's a quote that I truly practice by and try to really embrace as I'm working in my schools. So I wanted to remind everyone as we start talking about our students that first and foremost, it's so important to remember to take care of you. You've taken on such a huge task. For over a year, your kiddos have been in your homes learning and going through this virtual experience. And along the way, I know I needed several reminders from people within my close circle to remember to take care of me. And so that's why I really took a moment to pause as I was going through this journey to say, what are some things that I enjoy doing when I'm feeling stressed or things to calm me down? And as I mentioned, a trip to Starbucks typically cheers me up, or again, a shopping trip to Target where I'm buying something specifically for me helps really boost my mood. So I just wanted to be intentional about that and just reiterating that it's so important that during this time when we're dealing with a huge transition back into our school buildings, that you also remember to take care of you. You deserve it. You've done an amazing job over this year. And it's just very important to remember to take care of yourself and to really find those things that are specifically for you as a parent. So I just wanted to share that. So I wanted to talk about what returning to school means. This is so huge because for over a year, like I mentioned, our students have been at home. And so for many of our students, especially this morning on the first day, some students were definitely nervous. They were crying. They did not want to leave their parents. And so it was a huge transition for them. So I wanted to share that because there's going to be some separation anxiety that our students experience. They've been home for a whole year and they've been able to be in close proximity with family and with you. And so that adjustment of now transitioning their school days back into the building with their teachers is huge. And we just want to take that into consideration that some of our students are really going to have a difficult time with that transition of being away from mom and dad or any siblings. We had a couple of siblings actually crying that their brothers or sisters were actually returning to the building themselves. So it's a huge adjustment for your entire family. Change in structure. And I wanted to bring that up because the structure is going to be a little bit different now for many of our students that are returning to school. They are going to be seated with their laptops and again, socially distancing. So they're not going to be in close proximity with their friends and mainly within their personal space, their desk area. And that's a huge transition from being able to possibly get up at home, take a break, move around. That's going to be slightly different for them. New rules. Again, our students are dealing with wearing their mask for a full day, whereas at home, they did not really have to wear a mask. And of course, if they're out, it's for a limited amount of time. If they're going out to the store, outside to play, you would wear your mask, but there's an opportunity to take it off. And of course, at school, you are able to take it off when you're eating, and there are certain exceptions. But for most of the day, they are wearing a mask, which is a new rule for them and something that they have to adjust to. New transition. So many of our students who possibly were familiar with the routine of riding a bus, that looks a little different this year. So there are a lot of transitions, a lot of new experiences that they have to go through. New expectations, that goes right along with, again, their breaks may look a little different. At home, they were maybe able to, turn off the screen and possibly go to the kitchen, grab a snack, and then come back to the learning area. In school, that looks a little bit different for them. So that adjustment, it may take some time for our students to get used to this new routine. So I just wanted to share these considerations because this can cause stress. It can cause a level of anxiety of a change that's happening. And my goal tonight is to really discuss some preventative measures that we can take to reduce that anxiety and to reduce that stress for you and for your students. So I wanted to talk a little bit about what stress looks like and what anxiety looks like, and it looks different for everyone. And I wanted to bring that up because there are certain symptoms or experiences that your child could be going through, and they may not be able to express that, but it's something that you could observe. And a student who's stressed or anxious, they could be going through multiple areas or multiple symptoms. Maybe it's just one category where it's physical, where they just appear overly tired. Some students that are anxious could have trouble breathing or a physical symptom like a headache. When you think of just the mental implications of stress, A student may appear very worried, negative thoughts, not feeling as confident, and not being able to make the best decisions in their environment. There is an emotional component of just being irritable. Maybe they're not as willing to be around others as they're used to, and they're more withdrawn. And then behavior, where you may see more outburst or more rigidity, where they're not as accepting of a change in the environment as usual. So I just wanted to mention that because it looks different for everyone, just the same as it would look different for you and I and how we're stressed. Some days I may feel very tired and I need to make changes in my routine, like insert time for a nap. There are other times where I may feel a little bit more withdrawn and I may not want to be around others. So it's just something to really consider for our students, that changes such as being home for a year and then transitioning to the building, it can cause a level of stress and anxiety. And just to be aware of that, because I do believe that if you are aware, then you're able to put certain things in place to really reduce that stress level, reduce that anxiety level. So one great way to really assess how your child is doing is by really asking, how are you feeling? And so for some of my students with autism, a visual is very, very helpful. And so having a feelings chart available to you is definitely going to help with this conversation. I think it's so important, especially with our children with autism, to really talk about feelings and how we express our feelings. And if we're not feeling our best, if we're feeling a little sad, what are some things that we can do to make us feel better or to help us throughout the day? I think that that's very, very important. So especially when I am working with students in counseling, we talk about feelings regularly, and we talk about how it's okay if we're feeling sad today. It's okay if we're feeling angry. I really work with them to try to identify what is making you angry, what's making you anxious. I had one student in counseling share that he is very angry because of the coronavirus. And this has really changed his daily routine. He missed going to school and he didn't really enjoy virtual learning. And we really talked through that. And that was able to happen because, again, he was able to express his feelings, and we were able to work through some strategies that when you're feeling angry, when you're feeling upset, what are some things that you can do? So I really encourage as often as possible, if you're able to ask your student how they're doing, and then throughout the day, because feelings are fluid, they change. And so we may have started our day feeling great and feeling excited. And then when a student possibly gets off the bus and gets to the school building, all of a sudden they feel a little anxious. This is new. I'm not used to being in a school building. Again, so being able to have that, I think, conversation is very, very important. So I wanted to just highlight my own daughter and my experience. So there were some days where she was feeling good and I felt that the routine was being followed. I felt that she was really having a good virtual learning experience. And so on those days, I really tried to highlight her positive behaviors that I thought, this is great. I want to see this more often. And so anytime that I felt that, again, she was exhibiting a positive behavior, I tried to praise her and really compliment her. And so I felt if she was sitting well, or I felt that she was really focused during reading, I would highlight that. I really loved how you sat through your reading session. I really loved how you raised your hand to answer a question. And she really responded well from that. So I want to encourage you to do that at home. If you're seeing your student engage in behaviors that are great and you want more of, I really encourage you to take the time to be intentional about highlighting that. I really loved the way that you completed your math classwork without your teacher having to remind you. Little things like that. And then I do implement a reward system. And I see that many of my students in my school benefit from that as well. And so, especially if they're exhibiting behaviors, more positive behaviors, definitely I try to implement a reward and then an extra reward if it's a really, really great day. And so I think that that's important. And so I'll be talking about reward systems a little bit later in the presentation, but I wanted to highlight that. And then naturally, there were days where my daughter was not in the mood at all. And so you probably experienced that at home, that you had really good days and then days where your child was just over it, over the virtual experience, which makes sense. That's a normal emotion. Again, this was a complete change in routine, having to learn at home and be behind a computer. It takes a lot out of you, and it took a lot out of our students. And so I wanted to just express that it is okay and perfectly normal if your child experienced days where they wanted nothing to do with the virtual experience. And on those days, I wanted to just recommend that additional breaks may be needed. So additional time away from the computer. And I think really having that communication with your child's teacher and just sharing that my child really is not having or feeling the best, and they may benefit from additional time away from the computer is completely valid. So I do want to encourage you to have those types of conversations, because it's definitely okay if your child on any given day needs additional breaks throughout the school day. There were times where I had to modify her workload. So we may not finish a full worksheet within that designated time, and we may come back to it later after school. I definitely always tried to make sure that the work was completed, but I allowed some flexibility in the schedule. And that was, again, based on her. I kind of really made some arrangements based on how she was feeling. There were days where she felt energetic and that she could complete all the work within the designated time. But then when there were other days where I had to adjust the schedule. And as I mentioned, if I felt that she was having a rough morning, so we may not target our reading worksheets or books right away. Let's maybe do your preferred subject, or maybe let's give you some extra time to get yourself together, and then we'll go back to academics. So again, just that flexibility in the schedule, I think, is very helpful. For many of our students, I think providing choices. So would you rather would you rather take your break now, or would you like to work and then take your break after? I think that flexibility is very, very important. And then reduce distractions. So I talk about this a little bit later in the presentation, but really creating a learning space for your child is very helpful. And reduction of distractions is definitely beneficial. So I just wanted to share that, again, there are days where our students may not be feeling their best, and we're going to have to make some adjustments within the environment to really help that, to make them be as successful as they can be. I wanted to also share just this visual. I work with students in counseling sessions to really identify strategies that when they're feeling angry, when they're feeling sad, what are some things that you can do? And that visual is so, so important. And so I remind them, let's look at your sheet. Would you like to take a deep breath? Would you like to squeeze something? Would you like to color? Giving a child options is very helpful in the process. And it really helps with them feeling like they have control over the situation. And I think that visual is also key. So I like to always have a bucket of, or a box or a bucket of strategies that they can choose from, so that they, when they are feeling a certain emotion, that they have a strategy that they can use. All right, so how can we prepare? So our autism programs in particular have been really working hard to provide predictability, structure, consistency, and collaboration. And these things really apply in the school setting and in home setting. And so predictability, what I mean by that is really reducing any unexpected changes, really providing a structure and being able to prepare our students for what's to come. And so a schedule more than ever, I think, is so, so important, especially with the hybrid model, because you have 2 days where your student is going to be inside of the building, and then you have 3 days where your child will still be at home. And so there's a lot of fluctuation that you see in the schedule for just a week. And really preparing our students. So yes, you'll be in the building for Monday and Tuesday, and then you'll be home Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, or however the schedule will look for your student. I think it's very important to have a visual of that you can reference at home. Organization. And so I'll go over that a little bit later in the presentation, where I talk about having a system for different classes, color coding certain things, really helps with that preparation for instruction. Consistency. So some of the rules, the routines that we do at school, we love to carry it over at home. Some of the language, like I said, highlighting positive behaviors, that's definitely something that we try to utilize when we're working with students with autism, is highlighting those positive behaviors and providing reinforcements for them. So that collaboration between home and school is so important, that consistency. And that's really how we prepare our students for such a huge transition that they're going through. So the learning environment. I'll go into this more, but I just wanted to highlight just some considerations that I'd like for you to consider. I talked about reduced distractions. At times, I know many of our kiddos at home prefer to maybe sit on the couch closer to the TV and have access to maybe certain items, toys, things like that. Really removing those distractions so that they can focus on academics is going to be key and helpful during the learning process. So I just wanted to add that as a consideration. Really establishing a designated area, a place where you can go for a break, where it's not related to instruction, and then another place where this is your learning space, where we cut on our laptops and we get ready to learn. So having designated areas will be very, very helpful in clearly defining what activities take place. When we sit in this area, we're getting ready to, again, engage with our teacher and get ready to do our classwork. When we sit in this area, this is our break area, where you can play with certain sensory items or take a break, a physical movement break, whatever you deem is appropriate, but really separating where these activities are taking place is very helpful. A daily schedule, I talk about that, and really outlining what a day looks like and having a time to either cross off or check that we've completed our morning routine. Now we're going to get ready to go into reading. Oh, reading's been completed. Now we're jumping into math, and then you'll have a break. Really providing a visual of this information is helpful. I mentioned calming tools versus toys. And so, as I mentioned, when I work with students in counseling, I really try to have them identify a calming box, or it could be a container of items that they use only for when they're feeling upset, maybe when they're feeling anxious or sad. And these are different from toys because these strategies are specifically used when they're feeling a certain emotion. Toys, they can play with all of the time, but we're very intentional about the items that we put in our boxes, our calming tools box. And again, I really try to correlate that these items we're using to really help to self-soothe, to really calm ourselves down. And I talk about that a little bit more. And then again, visual supports in the environment. Are there reminders up about maybe the materials that you need for the day? Are there communication systems available to help you communicate your needs and wants in the environment? Those are definitely important considerations to have. All right. So I mentioned visuals, and I wanted to be specific about that. So I really think that many students benefit from a checklist, and I have a visual of that in the next slide where I talk about the materials that they may need for school, your computer, your charger. Is there a visual of that reminder, a checklist of things that they may need, their materials? Daily schedule, as I mentioned, daily schedule and a weekly schedule may be very helpful for many of our students because, again, they're shifting from school a couple of days of the week and then back to home. Post-it notes are something that you can also put around the house, maybe in the bathrooms, just some reminders: brush your teeth, remember to wash your face, and then get ready to change your clothes for the morning time. Or a post-it note by the door: did you remember to grab your book bag, your lunchbox, and your computer? And then I also recommend for our older students in middle school and high school to utilize a calendar or an agenda book. Again, just to be able to be prepared for what their day, their week will look like. And then right here is just a visual, again, of a morning routine example of one that we would use at school. But again, it's very specific about what we want our students to do. Write your name and date on a point sheet, do your daily warm up, and then put it in your folder or put it in your mailbox, and then put any unfinished work away. So again, just that breakdown of expectations is very, very helpful. Right here is just a visual that I created of just a basic checklist. I think it's going to be very helpful for our students. I probably benefited from a checklist this morning. Did I have my purse? Did I have my laptop, my charger, my lunch, my mask, multiple masks that I could wear throughout the day? So I think that that's going to be very helpful for our students to stay organized and really to prepare them again. I think it can be very difficult, again, feeling unprepared in that moment. So we want our students to feel as prepared as possible, again, to reduce that level of anxiety and stress. And so again, having that checklist, again, or a Post-it note of kind of any materials that they may need for the day will be helpful. This one's more of a complex, I think, schedule that could be used for a middle school student or a high school student, where we break down your first period, maybe reading. What are the items that you need for reading? Your computer and your charger. And then any possible items that you need for reading could go in your red folder. Same for math, that's blue. So any math items would go in your blue folder. And these are the items that you would need to be prepared for your math class. So again, this is just a nice visual that I think many of our middle school students and high school students would be able to utilize to really to stay organized and to feel prepared for what they need for class. Right here is a visual breakdown of just washing hands. We had a lot of hand washing going on today in our classrooms. And for those students that are building their independence and are not quite at the point where they can do some tasks on their own, really this visual of breaking down the steps is very, very helpful. So we have this a lot in a lot of our classrooms, our visuals, and really breaking down those tasks that we want students to be able to eventually do independently. So I wanted to show you an example of that. I wanted to talk a little bit about screen time because I did participate in a lot of IEP meetings where focus and our students being able to sit in front of the screen was a concern. And so I definitely wanted to remind you that screen time continues to be an area where we continue to recommend that it's monitored and limited. And I know that we're dealing with very unusual circumstances where our students are in front of the screen, but it is completely normal for them to feel like, I need a break, I need to get up, and to possibly do that on their own with not being told to do so by their teacher. And so maybe during reading, randomly, they feel that they need to get up and exert some energy. And I wanted to just remind everyone that that's completely typical. According to the American Academy of Pediatrics, students should be away from their computers about every 20 minutes. They should either look away or physically get up from their seats and do something else. And so as you see here, walking away from their computer for at least 10 minutes every hour. And so I always just try to reassure many parents that, again, this is unusual territory that we're in. And not really ideal. We do want our students to have, screen time for learning, but to also step away. We know that a lot of screen time can start to impact sleep routines, as well as our vision. I have on glasses right now, just because, again, that amount of screen time can really impact your vision. So I definitely want to encourage any time away where they can take a movement break, a snack break. It's helpful. I encourage it because sitting for a long time in front of the screen is, it's not only difficult, it's not healthy. So I just wanted to recommend that I support that. I think communicating with our teachers throughout the day that, I need to take a break, putting it in the chat, or maybe sending an email that your student may need additional breaks throughout the day, I think is completely fine. Our students definitely benefit from it. wanted to share a little bit about what breaks can look like. Today, we had many kiddos that needed additional breaks. They were pretty motivated in the morning time to open their laptops and participate in instruction. But what I did observe is that by the afternoon, many of our students did not want to sit. And so what we're looking to do for many of our students inside of the building is to increase breaks and to be very intentional about what breaks look like. And so I would encourage you to ask those questions even at home and share that information with your child's teacher. What do breaks look like? And being able to specify that for our students. Does this specific break mean that I can get up and maybe take laps around the classroom? Or does this specific break mean that I maybe pull up one of my favorite apps on the computer? Or do I have some options? Can I play with kinetic sand at my desk? Things like that. And then how long is the break? There are certain points of the day where a child may just need a 3-minute break where they can get up and stretch. Certain parts of the day, there are going to be times where they may need a longer break. So being very specific and communicating these rules and the extent of what a break looks like for your student is going to be so helpful and important. I know that within my autism program, we were able to come up with sensory boxes that we developed for our students. And so really communicating with your school about what are some options, what are some break options that my child can have, what are items that you may be able to provide for my child during their break would be very, very helpful. And I also wanted to just share this visual. I encourage a lot of students and teachers to use break cards where this is a communication system, but you could also use it as a break card where they get a certain number of break cards throughout the day, and they're able to utilize a break card as needed. It really, again, helps them begin to be aware of their own regulation and say, I think I need to use a break card in this moment where I need to get away. And again, if you're setting parameters, sure, you can use the break card for a 5-minute break. And within that 5-minute break, you can have Play-Doh, you may be able to have kinetic sand, or you may be able to go on a website, an approved website of your choice. So again, really specifying for children, yes, you are going to have a certain number of break cards today, and these are the parameters. This is what your break looks like. 5 minutes with the option of kinetic sand, like I said, or Play-Doh, or even a movement break. You can get up and maybe do some laps around the room or in the back of the room. I think really establishing those clear expectations, but again, an opportunity for the child to be able to identify when they need their own break is very helpful. Okay, I wanted to talk about also just some flexible seating options. I know that by the end of the day, if I've attended especially several IEP meetings, sitting in a traditional chair it's rough. And so as you can imagine, sitting in a traditional desk and chair for 7 hours is very tough, I think, for a lot of our students. And so I recommend looking into some flexible seating options. Seat cushions, we provide bouncy balls, kind of these cushion chairs here at our school. And so really communicating or just talking with your school team about what are some options other than just the chair and desk method, I think are very helpful. Fortunately, in our autism program, we're able to have also desks that can adjust where our students are able to maybe stand and work for periods of time versus sitting. And just that opportunity for movement, I think, is very helpful throughout the instructional day. The traditional just sitting and trying to focus method can be a little difficult, especially from transitioning from, like I mentioned earlier, being at home where you can take those breaks and then now having to kind of sit in a designated space. So exploring flexible seating options, I think, is very, very helpful and will help many of our students being able to adjust to being able to learn, but I have some flexibility with my movement while doing so. I wanted to remind everyone that behavior is a form of communication. And so when I'm working with a student who's maybe having some difficulty focusing or maybe staying seated, or there are a lot of behaviors that we may see, really trying to understand what is the student trying to communicate to me. And when we're addressing behaviors, a lot of times being very clear about what the rules and expectations are can help. And so, for example, framing things in a positive way, really making it clear what are the behaviors that I want to see from you, what are appropriate within this environment is very important. So instead of saying, stop running around the classroom, I know sometimes I have a tendency to say, stop running at home. I've now shared to stop running, but I never made it clear what I want my child to do. So really making it clear, I need you to walk. I need you to sit down, versus saying stop running. You kind of leave the window open for other things to happen, like jumping, skipping, running, walking. Being clear about the behavior that you want to see is very important, especially when you're establishing rules. Allowing time for processing. Many of our students just need that wait time to be able to process the direction that you're giving. Sometimes we have a tendency to give students multiple directions at once, and really taking a step back and giving one direction and then giving our students time to process the rule or the directive, and then being able to follow through with it is important. And then I also recommend including visuals as well as is very important. So if one rule is to wash your hands after you use the bathroom, and then putting that visual of all the steps I want you to walk through before you leave the bathroom, that would be very helpful, that the child can look at that visual. Oh, okay, I'm supposed to turn the water on, put my hands underneath the water and rub with soap. Again, that breakdown, that visual will be very helpful for our students to be able to follow through. We highly recommend and use often first then strategy. And again, this is a simple visual that we have at our students' desk, where we have first, I need you to complete your reading assignment, or I need you to read this number of pages, and then you can have a break. Then it's computer time. Really preparing students for this is the expectation. And after you complete that expectation, then you'll have a break or reward. That visual is very helpful. They know what's to come. Once I complete reading, then I can have my reward time. Then I can have my break, is a strategy that we use very often. I wanted to talk about this visual for a little. When I see behavior charts or behavior systems, they look beautiful and they have beautiful language, like ready to learn. But when we're developing rules, expectations, and really targeting certain behaviors, we have to be very specific. So yes, it's great that a child is ready to learn. And I think I may have used this example earlier where I said ready to learn. But what does that look like? It may look different for every teacher, every parent, every child. And so really specifying when we're talking about behavior and behaviors that we want to see, what am I asking you to do? What do I need from you? What does this look like? Ready to learn could mean that you have your laptop open and you're ready to go. You're sitting in your seat and you look ready to go. Ready to learn could also mean that you're just sitting at your desk. You don't necessarily have your laptop open. So really specifying what you want your student to do and what it looks like is very, very helpful. I wanted to talk about some behavior goals that during the hybrid model, many of my parents and teachers, we've really collaborated and we've tried to address. These are just some areas that we found that during the hybrid learning and virtual learning, that many of our students needed behavior goals specific to these areas. And so one was about regulation. Some students are just very used to kind of getting up, especially at home. You're in the comfort of your own home, getting up, maybe again, going to the kitchen and getting a snack. And so transitioning into the building, it may be a little difficult, again, just kind of getting up and then resorting to your own devices. And so that regulation piece is very important and very helpful, where now we're asking students, instead of getting up and just taking a break, request a break, use a break card, raise your hand. So implementing that self-regulation strategy is very important. And we definitely revisited several IEPs to really kind of address the needs that we saw our students were struggling with during the virtual experience. And that's a recommendation that I have towards the end is there's a possibility that your IEP team may need to convene and really look at the goals that are on your child's IEP and adjust them to this new environment, this new routine that we're establishing of, again, being hybrid. Completion of assignments. I know many of the students at my school really struggled with completing a lot of the assignments online. And so work completion was something that we had to address. Identifying feelings and applying strategies. Again, it's a skill that I definitely work with students with in counseling, identifying feelings. When we're feeling frustrated, when we're feeling sad, what are appropriate strategies that we can utilize? When you're feeling frustrated from having to sit behind the computer, instead of maybe slamming the computer down or breaking the computer, what's another strategy that you could utilize? Following verbal directives, and advocacy, asking for help. Instead of feeling frustrated and again, maybe slamming the computer down, what are ways that you can ask for help? Maybe raising your hand, or if the chat option is available, being able to communicate to your teacher that I need help in this moment and I need your assistance. So these are all areas that you may just want to consider when you review your child's IEP or instructional plan. Maybe these are some areas that may need to be targeted, and your school team can really come up with a good list of strategies that can address these areas. I wanted to also say that, again, it's going to be very normal for your students to feel frustrated during this time, and you may see an increase in behaviors. And it's very important to really connect with your school team as early as possible so that you both can implement strategies that are consistent and helpful at home and for at school. Rewards. So I am big on really rewarding students for their hard work and for making positive choices. Just like we are as adults, it's very motivating to get a paycheck every 2 weeks. That's our reward for showing up to work and working hard. And so the same should be applied for our students. And so what I really recommend is making a list of rewards together. Our feelings change towards certain reinforcements and motivators. And so I always recommend, especially with students that are able to communicate their needs and their wants, being able to sit down with them and make a list of rewards together. And I recommend making a fairly lengthy list at that, because again, our feelings change, our moods change. 1 week I could be really motivated by going and getting ice cream. And then the next week, the thought of ice cream makes me sick. So I may be motivated by something else, maybe additional time outside may be motivating. So really having an extensive list that you're able to choose from, you and your student, is very, very helpful. And then really considering how many opportunities are available to earn a reward. Is your expectation that they earn 5 stars versus 10 stars? And that would equate to a reward. Being very clear about the opportunities ahead of time is helpful. And I have some examples of some good token systems that I think would be very helpful to implement and use. Consistency. I think it's very, very important for any behavior plan to really have consistency with rewards. When you see a positive behavior, that reward should shortly follow right after. We want to reinforce those positive behaviors that we want to see throughout the school day. And then within reason. And that's why I recommend making a list of rewards, because some days our students may be really motivated by getting a sticker. And then that could lead up to a bigger reward, like additional time outside. And so really collaborating with your school team on what a good reward system would look like specific to your student is very, very helpful. And so here having a visual of some token boards that I love. I love the idea of, again, you have a visual of what I'm working towards. It could be additional computer time, having access to my tablet, a snack. The goal is your behavioral goal. So if you want your student to raise their hand to actually, maybe instead of calling out, you want your student to be able to raise their hand, or at home, you want your students to be able to complete their reading assignment, or all assignments throughout the school day. They would be able to earn tokens. And then once they've achieved all of the tokens or have been able to put all the pieces together, then they're able to earn their reward. So I love this visual. It's definitely a resource that I found online. And I really just love token boards. So I think that this would be very helpful to use at home as well as at school. And again, that consistency is going to be very important. So I wanted to just talk briefly about socializing, because I know that the way that we socialize is definitely different now with, again, remaining at home and oh my goodness, I can't talk, having to socially distance. And so there are creative ways that we can still implement opportunities for our children to socialize with each other. And so one cool way is, I know it's still additional screen time, but really implementing a non-academic, non-instructional opportunity where they can socialize with a friend. So a social session via Google Hangout or Zoom or FaceTime. And I think what's cool for some of our younger students, if you maybe email a parent, if you have their contact information and maybe say, I'm going to have my child work on this coloring sheet. Maybe you can print it out and have your kiddo work on theirs, and they can have a coloring session and they'll both have access to the same sheet and be able to share that. So I think that that's fun. Just creative ways to create opportunities, again, for social interaction with peers. Watch parties, if there's a shared interest in a movie or show or games. And I also just included writing letters. I know this is more of an old school method, but I think it's still fun for a child to maybe be able to get a letter or a postcard from a friend in the mail. And the process of just working on maybe handwriting, I think, is pretty cool. So you may want to consider having your child have a pen pal that could be a classmate or a neighbor, and being able to go through the process of writing your letter and putting it in the mail and having that bond, I think, is pretty cool. So I just wanted to give some considerations. I know that, again, under these unique circumstances, we're not able to socially interact, but I think that that opportunity is very important for our students with autism, and being able to, again, have a just opportunity to interact with a peer is beneficial. I am wrapping up, but I wanted to end the session with talking about information sheets. I think these are very helpful anytime we begin a transition or the school year. And this is a sheet that you can really be as creative as you want with it, but it's really a sheet about your child. And what do you want all the individuals that work with your child, what do you want them to know? What are the most important things that you would want them to consider, or you think would be helpful to enhance their academic day? And you could do basics, date of birth, age, I think is just very helpful. Just parent info. Of course, your school office and your teacher has access to this, but sometimes just having it, again, readily available is helpful. Any interest, hobbies that could be used, preferences. If your child really loves Miss Russell, who may be the school counselor or their preschool teacher or pre-K teacher, that connection might help if your child is having a rough moment. And they may have access to this person or a specific thing in the school building. Any medical information, allergy season is upon us. So again, just immediate information is helpful for our teachers to know. And then any rewards or incentives that you're using at home, I think is very important to communicate that with your child's teacher, because they could very well use those same incentives, those same motivators at school. And again, that consistency is key. So I had an example because this is one that I use for my own daughter. She is 5, and here she is right here. But she has a medical diagnosis. And at times, if she's experiencing a crisis or in pain, she's unable to communicate her needs. And so this is information that I would want my teacher, my child's teacher, to know right away. But of course, you can make this specific to your child. But I wanted to give you an example of what this looks like. I usually put this on a 4x6 card, but you could be more elaborate and put it on a traditional 8.5 by 11 page. I just include her photo so that, again, all the adults in her building will be able to identify her, or she needed to go to the nurse. And then again, just some preventative measures that in the event that she was having a crisis or something at school, you would be able to know what's going on with her. If she's complaining of a headache, more than likely she's in some pain. And at times she's not able to communicate that. And so these are some look fors. So I wanted to just share this example because, again, you can make this personal. I have seen, again, the first day of school, just a letter of about your child, and that's sent to the child's teacher. And it's just very, very helpful. Or just a small 4x6 card. You can laminate it and put it on your child's book bag. Again, so if there's any pertinent information that any of the adults working with your child need to know, it's readily available. And then, so I just wanted to end the session with, again, just recommending collaboration. And so at any time, I encourage you to always consider having a parent-teacher conference where you can really establish methods of communication. You know, if you want to hear certain updates about your child, is that going to be through Class Dojo, or would you prefer your child's teacher to email you? Really establishing how you're going to communicate about any behavior concerns, any academic concerns. What's the best way that that information can get shared from home to school and school to home? And then a behavior system, really talking about a behavior plan is helpful. And again, to make sure that the same behaviors that we're working on in school, we can work on at home, and what are going to be our rewards for that, and helping establish, again, that consistency. I also want to just encourage you that at any point, you always have the opportunity to request an IEP meeting where you can discuss your child's IEP. As I mentioned, we spent a lot of time this past year kind of revisiting a lot of behavior goals and making sure that they were appropriate to the current learning environment. And I think that that's very helpful. Really reviewing any accommodations, modifications that may be needed, and those supplementary aids and services. Again, what does your child need to be successful in the hybrid learning environment? And so revisiting the IEP is always a great idea if you're feeling that you may need to make some changes or just take a look at what services are being provided and what goals you're working on. So here, I just have an opportunity for questions. Please feel free, this is my email, to email me if you need any additional resources, or if you have any further questions after this presentation. I am happy to respond to your email and get back to you with any information that I can. And
thank you so much, Brittany. We appreciate you being with us tonight.
thank you.